every superstition possible to make sure that we could have
Uh,
won. It just
uh,
didn't work. It was tough.
Might have been me. Maybe it's me. Just going to the
Dude,
game. Unlucky.
I literally I had like my parents went to a game like 2 years ago. But they were able to get like the suite tickets, so they got like cups, and I just like stole cups from the suite. So like I like used those cups. Like we watched in my
Yeah,
basement. We've never
yeah.
lost a game watching in my basement.
Oh my God.
It didn't work.
Damn.
None of it worked.
Yeah, my
It was
mom wore
bad.
her like lucky shirt or whatever. Like every time she wore this Nuggets shirt, like she wore it for like games 3, 4, 5, and they all won. And then she wore it, didn't work.
It didn't work. Nothing. Nothing worked. That's why it just wasn't meant to be. I assume, especially the amount of in and outs that happened. Like it was
Oh my
ridiculous. So
God.
many shots went in and out.
Especially like Jokic's threes, it feels like. And
Yeah.
then and Porter's too, some of them. But then Porter had
Mm-hmm.
that insane break. Like I thought, dude, a lot of the crowd, especially on my side, because I was looking at the like a broadcast type of view, like from the
Yeah.
side. Um, I thought it went in, and like a lot of people thought it went in. Like people were like cheering because the trajectory was good, and it looked like it like
Yeah.
banked off the back rim and like in, and so like we were all like cheering. I was like, yeah, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? Did that just go off the backboard, bro? That was
Dude, I
like
saw
that's
this
one of the
angle.
worst shots I've seen, bro. Like I saw like
I
the
saw this
back
angle that
angle.
ESPN. There's like a
Yeah,
back
yeah,
angle that
exactly.
ESPN showed. It was like 2 feet to the right. I was like,
Oh my
what?
God. It's worse than hitting the side of the backboard. That would be like an air ball off to the side.
Yeah.
Holy
It
shit.
was so bad. So bad.
Yeah.
Uh, well, welcome to another episode of The Sideline. My name is Viciosa,
My name's Asher Hire.
and we have a depressing episode
Yeah,
today,
we do. Yeah.
unfortunately. It was a happy one last time. But today is definitely a depressing one. The Nuggets season officially done after losing in Game 7 on Sunday to Minnesota. We talked before Game 6. We both thought Minnesota was going to win Game 6. We both kind of knew a Game 7 was happening, but we had no idea it was going to be that bad. The way Game 6 ended, we did not think it was going to be that much of a blowout. I thought, they were up 9-2, and I was like, yes, they're coming out with the right intensity, and then
Yeah.
they literally everything that went wrong could have went wrong.
Yeah.
And then Game 7 happened. Asher, you were at Game 7. What was like we were talking about earlier? Like, what was it like? Like, what was the
Yeah.
fourth quarter
Well,
like
I mean,
specifically?
like, first of all, it's just a weird feeling with the Nuggets season ending. Like they just kind of felt like they were like untouchable, really. Like, especially after the All-Star break, winning 13 of 14. I'm like, oh, they'll just tap into that in the playoffs, like they did last year. They played their best ball of the season last year in the playoffs. And I thought that they could kind of, you know, tap into that. And we've seen this team just be unstoppable at times. And it's shocking to see the starting five get outplayed by Minnesota starting five because that's never happened really. Outside of maybe like the 2020 Lakers series in the bubble, maybe like I don't know when another starting lineup really has just outperformed the Nuggets starting lineup like that. Um, and so yeah, I guess it's kind of a shock, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, game 7 was wild because like when they went up 20, the crowd was so into it, so loud. Um, and it was just it really felt like it was kind of over at that point, like everything was just going so well. Like and I think that kind of led to the demise a little bit is like there was nothing really, going against Denver like when they were up 20. Like as I said, the crowd was really happy. I saw it during, timeouts, like DeAndre Jordan, Peyton Watson, they were kind of dancing on the bench like this, we're up 20 at home. This thing's over with. Like in the third quarter, too. Um, it's not like it was a 20-point lead in the first quarter. Like this game, I mean, it was a 20-point lead, in the third. Um, and then yeah, everything just happened so fast, bro. Like um when Ant switched on to Murray in the third quarter, he couldn't get anything going in the first half, which was most of the Nuggets offense in the first half, which is Murray going off. Um, and then man, I mean, it was like you know, they got back to I forget what the run was, like 29-8 or something like that. in
Yeah, yeah,
the from like 10 minutes in the third quarter to the end of the third quarter. Um, and so you couldn't really believe it was happening until they took the lead. And then especially, I mean, that Ant step back at the end of the third quarter three was like it was like, damn, this is like a real game now because Ant seems like he's feeling it. And then, man, when Gobert hit that fadeaway, and then
Oh,
Conley hit that three fadeaway when he's been missing the whole entire game, it just felt like it was just like I don't know. I like when Gobert hit that fadeaway, it really deflated everything, bro. Because
yeah,
if he had missed that, because I think that made it a 4 point game or something. If he had missed that, Nuggets, you assume he misses it short, and so it's a shot clock violation, or they get the ball quickly and are out running. Um, and then that just goes in and makes it a two possession game, and then yeah, yeah, it was tough, but
yeah. That I think everyone watching when that happened, it was like, oh my God, like there's no way. When the Gobert shot went in is probably when I knew I was like, yeah, this is
yeah,
if stuff like that is happening to them and Denver's all of their shots are going in and out, they couldn't generate any good looks. That's kind of when it was like, okay, it's probably done. Because that happened with what, 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left in the fourth. Like there was still a lot of time, but I think you could just tell there was no confidence that the Nuggets had after that shot went in. There was nothing that they thought that they could do uh,
yeah,
after that had went in. That was bad. And I think Minnesota, like you have to give credit to Minnesota. I think a lot of game seven was Denver just screwing up. But I think a lot of it also was Minnesota made like incredible adjustments.
yeah,
Games three, four, and five, they were very content with letting Jokic go one on one against Gobert. They were very content with just letting that happen. Gobert was a primary matchup on Jokic. It wasn't Cat, it wasn't Nas, it was Gobert. Uh, but then after game five, they switched it. They had Cat on Jokic and they would double. They would hard double, not Gobert, but they would double someone else. So if Jokic were to come in the paint from the double, it would be Gobert waiting for him as well as other help side defenders with Cat. Like it was a really good defensive strategy. They sold out on trying to stop Jamal and Jokic in the fourth quarter. They're forcing other people to make plays, which is insane because normally that's the strategy you can't use against Denver because the others have been so good. Aaron Gordon, I thought, had a really, really good series through the first 5 games. Game sixes and seven, he was pretty much invisible. Michael Porter Jr. had a tough series overall. KCP had a tough playoffs overall, honestly, on offense. So they were very content with letting other people do like whatever they wanted instead of Jokic and Murray, which for this iteration of the team is like straight up unacceptable. I think that is
yeah.
like really bad because that's the strategy you used against Denver when Murray and MPJ were hurt, and you're like, yeah, we'll let Austin Rivers beat us, we'll let Monte Morris beat us, we'll let Will Barton beat us. Now those guys are high caliber role players, championship level starters, and that's still the strategy. And I think that was bad. That was the strategy Minnesota used defensively, and it worked. Like they were literally just like, we'll live with the results because they were giving open looks to everybody except Jokic and Murray, and no one
Yeah.
could hit a shot.
Yeah, and we'll probably get back to Porter and Gordon and as we talk about like the Nuggets outlook. But like it always kind of felt like the Wolves, I guess like yeah, like the Nuggets, I guess, should have won, especially with all the looks that they were getting. I mean, they were just like wide open looks that they were missing in game six and game seven. But like really ever since the beginning of the series, it kind of felt like the Wolves like really wanted it more. I mean, to come out with like in Denver and to come out of there 2-0 in dominating fashion, I think that kind of shows like early on the mindset is like, we want to dominate this team and we want this championship kind of more than the other team. Obviously, Denver makes adjustments and Jokic is insane and then comes back. But then game six to have like a 50-point blowout win, I think that's another sign of how badly they wanted it. And then in the
Yeah,
second half, um, in the fourth quarter, especially those offensive rebounds that Denver gave up to Naz Reid and to Karl
mm-hmm.
Anthony Towns. I mean, Minnesota had 5 offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter and 14 overall. They out rebounded Denver by 14 in the second half after the Nuggets out rebounded them in the first half. And I wonder if that like I wonder if they are fatigued though, like um really fatigued because Jokic, played almost the whole game. His only rest was like halfway in between the second quarter for like 2 minutes. Um, and he only shot two threes in the first half, and he shot eight threes in the second half. Like
Yeah,
I wonder if that shows that he never felt like that dominating game five Jokic ever again in this series. Like he didn't back down Gobert or Towns, which yeah, they were sending doubles, but there were also times I thought that he had the opportunity to go one on one against him, and he would just kick it out to Murray, maybe because he thought Murray like this was a Murray game and he was feeling it. But in the second half, when they're coming back like that, like he's got to take over, and he was just settling for threes, and some of them were going in and out, but then there were also a couple that were just way off.
yeah.
And so I wonder if that's a fatigue thing, but he's just been so well conditioned that it's like I don't know. You would think that he would kind of not be fatigued, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think fatigue is definitely a part of it for the entire team
Yeah,
because they obviously going all the way last year. You have a shorter off season coming into the year. Um, and I mean last season they really didn't try the entire month of March, and
right, right.
on all of April, however many the 2 weeks of April that they played in the regular season as well. It was all they did their work early in the season, and they were able to rest going into the playoffs. They were able to take games off. They were able to just not try and rest up going into a postseason run because they never seemed fatigued last year. No one ever seemed fatigued. They never got to a game seven. They definitely looked like they wanted it more. I think you look at that Phoenix series. I think that's very
Yeah,
similar to this one in terms of going into it. You're thinking this is going to be a really close series. This is going to be a series where like they're one team is going to win some games on the road, and Denver came out in those first two games and blitzed Phoenix. Like they really showed that they wanted it more. This time, like even in the Lakers series, like, they were just
yeah,
lackadaisical. They weren't really putting in too much effort. I think part of it was fatigue, but I think part of it is just like it just didn't look like they were as motivated as they were a year ago, which really stinks. Like if that like obviously they're never going to admit that, but that's what it looks like. Like I don't know what other reason there would be except fatigue as to why they just weren't trying harder. They weren't boxing out. It looked like they didn't have like pride going into some of these games where they were getting blown out and where they were
right,
getting
right.
killed on the glass, where they're getting embarrassed on their home court three times in 4 games. So I don't know what other like explanation that there would be to it other than the fact that Minnesota just straight up wanted it more. And in the
Yeah,
playoffs, if that's your issue, then that's a big problem.
yeah, and yeah. I mean, going back to those offensive rebounds again, it's just like you look at those replays and it's Jamal standing around, KCP standing around, Porter standing around, everybody's standing around. Like not even Jokic is really that aggressive to trying to
Yeah.
get the board. He only had four rebounds in the second half. After it looked like he would be on track for like a 25 rebound game, he only finished with
Yeah, he
19.
had 15 in the first half,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then four. Like it was bad. I mean, Jokic got abused in the fourth quarter on the glass. Like that was the biggest thing. I don't know if Denver like got a true stop in the fourth quarter where it wasn't like a turnover
right.
or it wasn't like because they would miss a shot and then Minnesota would just get the rebound straight away and they'd waste more clock and yeah, they might miss a shot after that, but they're still wasting a minute of possession just by holding the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah,
And
I also wonder if like the first half was so good that like was it too good? Like did they try too hard? Did they not really pace themselves in this game like they could have? Like because the defense, was swarming, especially the traps on Ant and then everybody running around
yeah, yeah.
scrambling. I mean, that takes a lot of energy out of you. And to only give up 38 points, I think it was in the first half, was amazing. Um, but like I wonder if that also kind of tired them out down the stretch defensively because, as you said, like you couldn't really guard anyone. Also, it's just ridiculous to me how much Jamal gets switched on to Cat. Like,
Oh, oh my goodness. That is
I
like
mean,
my biggest issue defensively that I have with Denver.
yeah,
They love switching. their guards on the bigs. And I don't they did it in the Lakers series too. They would always switch Jamal onto LeBron. It never worked. I understand the reason that they were doing that is so that they could send doubles and get the ball out of his hands and force him to get into rotation and play scrambling defense. But after a while, like it never actually worked. Like it worked in the first half of game 7, where they would get the ball out of his hands. But the second Cat started to attack that, the second he went before the double came, he scored every single time. And it was the same thing with the Lakers. It was the same thing last year. Like I don't understand it. They would also switch Jamal on to Anthony Edwards all the time,
Yeah.
and I really didn't understand that either because I think Jamal when healthy is fine as a defender, but he was not healthy at all this series. So why are you putting him in those positions to go guard people he's not nearly equipped to guard? And I
That
didn't
was
really
really
understand it.
like I thought Cat's defense was really good in the series, but offensively, like it was a disaster for him when he would go one-on-one against Aaron Gordon. Like I felt like the
Yeah,
momentum, anytime he would try to go against AG, he would be slipping, falling down, offensive foul, shot that's not even close, or it's blocked or something like that. And it would kind of, like flip the momentum. Cat wouldn't get going offensively. And if Cat's not going offensively, that team's not going to be a good offense. They just don't have, enough. But once he gets Murray onto him, like that gets Cat going. He does these fadeaways that somehow always go in, and then like um right-handed baby hook over Murray, or he attacks, going left and then throws up like a right-handed floater. Um, and those are all against Murray, and it gets him going. And I feel like it gets him motivated too, rebounding wise, defensive wise.
mm,
Because Cat's always been one of those players like throughout his career where it seems like you can kind of get into his head, but he's kind of flipped the switch this year for real. And Ant's leadership, I feel like, is a big part of that. Like
yeah.
um, Cat was always seen as
Yeah,
kind of soft, and
Yeah,
he was
Cat has.
definitely
I think he's had
not
a
soft.
phenomenal playoffs. I
Yeah,
think he's had a phenomenal, like especially off, like defensively in the first round. His task was to guard Kevin Durant. Like he he was switched on to Kevin Durant a ton, especially when Minnesota would go, or when excuse me, when Phoenix would go 5 out and they would run KD at the 5. It was Cat's job to chase him around the perimeter, and he did a phenomenal job. And the reason why Minnesota over the past couple of seasons has underachieved or their offense hasn't really been good in the playoffs is because you could get away with putting smalls on him. Like Memphis, you could get away with putting Kyle Anderson on him when he was still there. You could get away with putting Desmond Bain or Dylan Brooks. You could get away with putting guards on him because he wasn't going to attack it and he wasn't good enough at it. But this season, he's been incredible. He's attacked every single mismatch he's had, and it takes their offense to a whole different level. It's still not a great offense. They still only scored 98 points in the game, but it changes the flow of their offense. There's not a point where you can be like, yeah, if we switch onto him, we're going to be okay, because you're not. Like there's nothing that you can do if Cat's gonna be aggressive and attack a mismatch like that. Especially if
yeah,
they're going to run a 2-man game with Cat and Ant. Like you can't switch that. You can't do anything against it. So I'm like honestly very happy for him because he has gone through a lot,
yeah.
especially with the narrative around him. People hate him for seemingly no reason. I don't know what he's done exactly. Like I don't like watching him simply because he moves funny. Like when he's like trying to attack through physicality, like he just it looks like he's throwing a temper tantrum when he's going. But that's just the way his body. Like he can't do anything about that. That's not an actual reason to hate him as a player or
Yeah.
anything. It just looks
Yeah, I feel
hilarious.
like it's gone back to like the whole Jimmy Butler thing in like 2018, whatever that was, calling Cat soft,
Yeah.
and then Butler looks like he's tough because he's making the finals and stuff. So it's like, oh, he's right about Cat. So everybody knows that Cat is soft, and then obviously like his voice and everything makes him look soft too. So it's just like I don't know, people just always kind of like ever since that Jimmy, I feel like that Jimmy Butler thing kind of flipped the script on him. Because I
Yeah,
thought he
for
was
sure.
really
And
good like
I
his
like
first like 3 years.
he against Dallas, he's gonna have to do the same thing, like attack mismatches, because I think he's gonna have smaller guys on him the entire time. He's gonna have PJ Washington guarding him, I assume. I don't think there's gonna be anybody else who they would put on him. There's no one else big enough to guard him. They're not gonna start two bigs, because the spacing would be horrible. But like he has to attack. Like they're gonna sell out on Ant. He's got to be able to do good, which I think he can. I think he can have a really good series against Dallas for that specific reason.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was pretty much game 7. Yeah, I thought another main takeaway. Like I kind of brought it up, but Ant's defense on Murray, I thought like changed the momentum for sure. Um, yeah, because he said like at the end of the game that he had Murray in cuffs or whatever, and like people are like, oh, but Murray had 35, which he did, but really, I mean, that defense that Ant played on him like changed the game, and like Murray didn't score, I don't think in the third quarter, um,
No,
and so yeah, that was also a big thing. McDaniels surprised me. I mean, damn, like
that
23 points out of
yeah.
McDaniels. It's hard to beat them when you get like Ant had a oh my God. I mean, just the fact that like we lost this game with Ant scoring 16 points and having a 6 for 24 game is crazy,
Yeah.
man.
And that's always kind of the way it is in game sevens. There's
Yeah.
always role players who have to step up because the game plan is going to be don't let your stars beat you. Like that's always what the game plan is. Minnesota was able Naz Reid and Jade McDaniels throughout the entire series outplayed three Denver starters. And specifically in games 5 and 6 or 6 and 7, they outplayed three Denver starters. And I think Aaron Gordon outplayed most of them for majority of the series, but in game 6 and 7, he wasn't able to do anything. And Jade McDaniels had incredible games 6 and 7. Um, and like that's what I think that's what it came down to, especially in a game like in a game 7, you need your role players to play well. I thought Christian Brown was fine, but Justin Holiday in the second half didn't. I don't think he scored at all. I don't even think he got a shot off, actually, in the entire game. Reggie Jackson played like 2 minutes and then didn't play the
Yeah.
rest of the game. And then the obviously we talked about MPJ before. KCP had a tough series. Like and Aaron Gordon didn't do anything in the second half. Like it comes down to that. And I think Minnesota is just a deeper team. Their bench is way better, specifically because of guys like Nas and Alexander Walker and Jade McDaniels because of their ability to step up in big games and honestly make impacts when they're not scoring the ball. Nas's defense over the first two games was really, really good on Jokic. Um, Jay McDaniels, obviously, you're going to get elite defense from him every game, even if he's not scoring. And he was giving you elite defense in game 6 and 7, plus giving you 20 plus points. There's no way you're going to win if MPJ is not going to do anything or KCP is not doing anything. So I think that's what it came down to.
Yep. Well, that's it for the Nuggets this season. It was a fun season. Like we want to do like a little season recap or something. Um, it was fun, but I also kind of expected like more, I guess. I kind of expected more out of Murray throughout the season. Porter was good. Um, but he didn't really take a leap, I don't think. Maybe defensively he did, but offensively he kind of like yeah, he did drive more. He developed that part of his game. But his shooting was better whatever, the championship season. Um
I also think his improvements he showed during the regular season didn't show out in
didn't
the playoffs.
yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, like even in the Lakers series, like Lakers series, his jumper was just on. I don't really think he wasn't driving, he wasn't showing off his handle or anything like
Right.
that. It was just the jumper that was working. And unfortunately, in the Minnesota series, it just didn't come out. But I agree with you that
Yeah.
I think last year he was better.
There was an article by Kevin O'Connor that came out. I've only like seen bits and pieces of it, but maybe there was some sort of rift between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone this season. Like Booth said in the beginning of the season that it's not about going back to back. Like they want to develop a team that, under this new CBA where it's hard to retain most of the guys on the team. Um, if it's an expensive team, that like developing these rookies and not really signing anyone impactful to come off the bench to replace Bruce Brown scoring wise. Um, that he wanted to kind of have this team be good for like 6 years and maybe win like 2 or 3 out of 6 years, or 2 out of 5 or something. Um, and then Malone, it felt like I guess he wanted it, to be more present. Like these guys are healthy, these guys are all in their prime. Who knows if it's it's tough relying on young guys. I mean, that's a risky game to play. Like you don't know if these guys will develop. It's a long waiting time. So who knows if Porter has another back something in his back that comes up, and then all of a sudden you just kind of lost, last year because you were thinking too much about the future. And the Nuggets got lucky this season without having any major injuries. Um, but it is risky, and so I think that was a big, you know, point in the playoffs as we saw and throughout the season that missing a guy off the bench, reliable scoring wise, was a big issue. Um,
Yeah. No, I
and
think
yeah,
like when you look at, I mean, I brought this concern up multiple times in the beginning of the year. It's very similar to the Warriors and what they did last season. A very vet heavy team going into their championship run in 2022. And they come out of it, and yeah, they still had the rookies on the team, right? Denver still had Peyton Watson and Christian Brown. They were still on the team, but and the Warriors had Kuminga and Moses Moody and Wiseman on the team in 2022, but they weren't really factors in that playoff run. But the next season, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to have the kind of dual timeline philosophy where you're developing these guys, but also you're making a push and trying to win. I just don't think I don't think that's possible. The
I
Warriors
mean,
showed it
like, yeah, like
it's
Wiseman
not.
didn't turn out to be anything. Moses Moody hasn't really turned out to be much. And Jordan Poole is off the team, and so like
Yeah,
it's tough to play that game.
yeah.
I also like even kind of think of like I always felt like Memphis or even OKC right now, like they've relied too much on young guys. I don't know. Like I feel like Memphis had multiple opportunities, but instead they just like draft like Jake LaRavia. Like I feel like you had an opportunity to kind of trade a pick like that and some young players to get a more veteran guy. I finally got Marcus Smart, but the season was just ruined by Morant stuff. And then OKC this season, I mean, Presti's
They
definitely
have to
obviously
they have to
building for
make
the
some sort
future,
of move
but
to get
they have to
somebody
do
else.
something, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but yeah, I think it's. I mean, we were looking at the Broncos trying to do it in other sports too. Like they've tried to develop and also win at the same time. It doesn't work. It is you have to commit to something. And yes, while I do agree, the CBA this year. Sorry about the lighting. The sun just came out. The CBA this year, or for the next however long it is, I do agree that it's hard that you have to draft well for you to be successful at it. But you know, taking your 2 second rounders and Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson, signing them to guaranteed contracts instead of two ways, I think was a mistake because it really handcuffs you into making those guys be NBA players, which I'm not sure if they are yet. I think Jalen Pickett has a chance. I think Jalen Pickett's going to get an opportunity next season to be a guy alongside Colin Gillespie, but I don't know if either of those guys are really going to be enough
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
playoff rotation caliber guys next season. Um, I once again I don't know who else you could have gone out and gotten in free agency at the same time because of it just you're a second apron team already. You don't really have that much flexibility in free agency regardless. But and to the people like there's a lot of people who are saying, oh Denver, why didn't they re-sign Bruce Brown? They should have just brought him back. They had no chance of bringing him back. Zero chance at all of bringing him back. I even think this season they don't have a chance of bringing him back because their Raptors are going to trade him. Denver just doesn't have the salary to match it. So
yeah.
I it's tough.
Um,
It's tough. I
uh,
think
yeah,
they have a lot of decisions to make regarding the depth and a different philosophy attacking the regular season. Because I think they gave the young guys a chance in the regular season early. Gillespie and Pickett were both rotation guys when Murray was injured. Strother obviously was part of the rotation early, but it's hard. It is really hard to do that while also trying to win because especially
yeah,
in the West today, like you can't afford to have to make mistakes, which you have to do in order to develop young players.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, one guy
so
we haven't even talked about, and I feel like lots of Nuggets fans like forget about is Zeke Naji. I mean, that's a mistake that's happened. That was a risky move before it
yeah,
really seemed like Zeke proved himself. You give him a $9 million cap hit over 4 years. Um, and that hasn't worked. Like like
no,
hopefully he gets traded because if he gets traded, that opens up a $9 million slot where you can obviously get a better player this offseason. But I mean, that's already I mean, jeez, man, given those dudes, like as you said, Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, these guaranteed contracts, and then giving Zeke Naji this kind of guaranteed contract, a big one. Um, it's it hasn't really worked yet. Um,
No. And like it is
yeah,
hard to win a championship. Like, there has to be so much that goes in your favor. Like, I do think if Jamal Murray is healthy, like I think even when he was healthy in the Lakers series, he wasn't great, but you saw that he was still creating space. He was still getting his shots. They just weren't going down. You saw in game two, even in game one, like
yeah,
when he got going, you could still tell that he was still the same guy. But once the calf injury happened, he was not nearly the same player. It was very clear that he was not creating any space. He couldn't get anything, and especially against Minnesota's defense, where they are just there's so many guys that they can throw at him and so many different looks. I think if he's healthy, the series goes differently. I think they probably are
yeah,
able to win, but
yeah.
that's
No, yeah,
that's part of the season. Like a lot has to go your way. And
no.
I don't think
I
Denver
agree.
losing this season is like it. You know, there's a lot of people who are like, you got to trade MPJ, you got to trade, do this, do everything. Like, you got to tear down some of the stuff. No, just relax. It's hard to win in the NBA,
Yeah,
especially to go back to back. So, sorry. Keep going.
no, it's all good. Um, yeah, like I feel like we're kind of being like negative right now, but also like they still took it to 7 games against the team who looks like could be the best team in the NBA. We'll have to see how this goes because like if Minnesota doesn't look that good against Dallas and they like lose that series, it might kind of change my outlook on the Nuggets just because they also didn't look good against the Lakers. But like at the same time, they took a really good Timberwolves team to 7 games. And theoretically, with this team, the guy averaging like 17 points on 40% 3-point shooting in the regular season is going to show up and make some threes. And for
Yeah.
that to not happen the entire series outside of game one, um, I mean, it's unlucky, I guess, because because I do think Porter is a really good player, and so like theoretically in your head, you're thinking Murray and Jokic, great 2-man game, and then you get something from Porter, KCP, or Gordon, and for none of that to happen, and you still almost win that game 7. I mean, the overreactions of like blowing up the starting lineup are crazy to me. Um,
No. This, like, Denver starting lineup got, like, they were not good in this series, which is insane. That is the first time that it has happened in literally 2 full seasons where they have been a bad lineup. Um, and I think part of it's Murray's injured. Part of it is just that Minnesota is. People are forgetting this. They were built specifically to beat Denver. Their architect is the guy who built Denver. He traded away the guys specifically to get Gobert. Like they built it around stopping Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Losing to them is not a big deal. Obviously, the way that they lost, choking a 20-point lead, is not good. In a
yeah,
game 7 on home court, losing 3 out of 4 games on home court is not good. But you still won 2 games on the road in Minnesota. You still got it to a game 7. Minnesota was the best team in the West for a majority of the season. So them being the 3 seed is not a big deal. They were literally 1 game behind Denver, and Denver was tied for first with OKC. So the top 3 in the West were all neck and neck the entire season. And I really don't think that losing to Minnesota is a huge deal because they are so good. Like I do think you have to change some things about the philosophy of attacking the regular season. You have to attack some depth. You have to get a backup center. I think making sure that you got to do you have to do 3 things. You have to either make sure that Colin Gillespie and Jalen Pickett are NBA players and that they can contribute right away next season. One of those 2 guys, or you go draft a point guard who can, or sign a point guard, do something with somebody who can be a legit backup and a legit ball handler, and you have to get a backup center. You have to get someone who can play backup minutes because Jokic cannot have this much of a burden on him the entire time. Um, but those are things that Denver needed last year anyway. It's not like these are new issues that Denver has had because of the series. So they're very fixable. I don't think that it's, skies falling for the Nuggets whatsoever.
yeah. And now I think like Minnesota also kind of had an advantage building their team because they knew what the Nuggets were, but because the Nuggets built their team first. And so now that the Nuggets have a chance to see Minnesota and how their team looks going against the Nuggets now, I think they know like, the weaknesses. Like as you said, um, probably a backup big man against all those three guys would be ideal. And then with KCP most likely like being gone, maybe you sign a bigger perimeter defender out there. If there is one, like I don't know. But I mean maybe Christian Brown is that guy. Just because
He
you
was the
saw
best
like
defender on Ant. Like
yeah, yeah.
he was
I mean
he was the
KCP
best
was
dude to put on
getting
him.
KCP was kind of getting bullied, and that's kind of his like his thing is that against quick small guards like Curry or Lillard or someone like that. His defense is outstanding because he can fly around those screens and keep up with them, and they don't have the strength to get separation on him. But then the bigger guards, he always has trouble with, and that includes Ant. So like now the Nuggets know, okay, that KCP Ant matchup is just not ideal. So someone to replace that. But yeah, I mean the Nuggets I think just now kind of know their weaknesses. Um, whereas Minnesota knew Denver's weaknesses before Denver knew
Yeah.
Minnesota's weaknesses.
Yeah. And I think another thing about like the fan reaction or even like the national media reaction to this is the first time that Denver has had championship expectations and lost. Like legitimately. This is
Yeah.
the first time where they have been expected to be in the finals or expected to be in the conference finals and lost. You look at the first year they were in the playoffs, 2019. So youngest team in the playoffs, second youngest team ever to
Oh,
make the playoffs. And you lose on game seven, your home court, but that's okay. Like that, they were barely supposed to be in that position in the first place. That's fine. The bubble, you exceed expectations, you get to the conference finals, you're not expected to beat the Lakers anyway. The next two seasons, you have injuries, you're not expected to do anything anyway. You're all just gearing towards 2023, where you had championship expectations and you win. Then this season, you lose. It happens. Like it just does. But I think this is the first year in literally like five where they're the only reason that Denver lost is because the other team was just better. And it's hard to wrap your head around that sometimes after you've been the best team in the league for a legitimate like 18 months. But that's the way it goes. Unfortunately, it's the way it goes. But uh I think Denver is gonna be just fine. I think they're gonna be fine. As long as Jokic and Murray are healthy going into the playoffs, I think they have a chance against anybody.
yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of like crazy talk around Jokic. It's like, oh, Jokic has never beat a 50-win
Oh,
team in the playoffs, and this and that. Um, it, like the thing is, like if the Nuggets just come back, which I think they like will, the starting lineup I think still is fantastic. If they come back and just like win the championship next year, like all this stuff, just like I feel like I won't even like care about this Timberwolves series, um, and all this talk will like stop. But man, there's been some crazy like Jokic takes. I thought after Game 5 with him basically forcing putting the Nuggets back into this series where everybody was saying, "Oh, the Timberwolves are the best defense of like the decade or past 2 decades." Um, and I thought Jokic putting up 40 against them in Game 5 would kind of like be like, okay, like respect Jokic because it looked like you were really going to lose this series after going down 0-2. But I guess not. I guess 34-19 and 5 or whatever still isn't good enough in a Game 7 for them. Um,
I mean, outside of Jokic and Murray, no one scored
Yeah,
more than
no, it's
7 points. 7 points in a game seven. You can't get anything more than that from any role player. That's that's where you lose the game. Like but media is so like it is so hard to be a star in the
yeah,
NBA. Like if you win, it's because of you, and you're the guy.
exactly.
Like
If you win,
An-
if you win, like oh
Andrews is
the
getting all the praise. He
exactly.
shot 6 of 24. He was not the reason they won. Like yeah, he was a factor. He played great defense, and they figured out how to attack the double with him. He was willing to pass the ball and double teams and do everything. Yeah, but he shot 6 of 24. The reason they won is because Karl Anthony Towns was great. Rudy Gobert was phenomenal, and they got good performances from McDaniels and Reed. That is why they won. It's nothing else. But Jokic 34, 19, and 7. Jamal Murray had a good game. They're getting blamed for it, despite the fact that no one else did anything. It's just the way that media is, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Malone's getting roasted on social media,
Oh
which
yeah, well because he was like mad. But the thing is, they
yeah,
only showed that one clip. If you watch the whole interview, there was a question right before it that asks him the question right before it was like, "Oh, how does it feel knowing you lost 3 home games to the Wolves?" Malone answers, like respectfully, and then the next question is, "How does it feel losing after a 20-point lead at home?" Like those were back-to-back questions, and that's the
yeah,
one clip they show is Malone saying like, "Oh, stupid ass questions," which they are. Like, how are you gonna say how do you feel like after you lose?
yeah,
Like everyone knows how you feel. Like, bro, I don't know how
yeah.
they have a job like asking these questions. Like,
obviously, obviously, it feels like ass
yeah.
losing a series like that. Of course, it's not gonna feel great.
And then people are
But
like, "Oh,
it's
Malone's a crybaby." I have never like all these like controversial Malone moments. I feel like I do a good job of like being unbiased. Like Murray's heat pack thing, that's way out of line and stuff.
mm,
Um, but I've kind of just like I've never had a moment where I've like disagreed really with Malone, other than maybe him like firing back at that reporter for calling him Mike. Like, okay, he was just
yeah.
mad in the moment. Like that's like one thing where I'm like, all right, Malone. Like, and then but like other than that, like the comments against the Lakers, like he never said we're the daddy or whatever. Like
He
that was
never
one
no,
part.
like everybody keeps saying like, oh, he keeps talking trash about the Lakers. He keeps doing this. He didn't say anything.
No,
He was
exactly.
not the person who said Lakers daddy. It wasn't. It was Vic Lombardi. It was
Yeah,
not Malone in any way. And the entire it's not just fans who are running with that. It's like media who's running with that. It's everybody who's running with that. They're like purposely painting a false narrative of who Malone is as like
yeah,
a human, not as a
no,
coach. And it's
right.
like, what is happening? Like, just do some research. He didn't say that. And then like I remember he said it. It was like he said something about the Lakers where after they had won like 12 in a row or whatever, and they were like, yeah, I mean, we swept them last year, and we swept the regular season, won 2 straight. Like, of course they're gonna be mad. Of course they're gonna be angry. It's like everyone's like, what are you? Well, God, he's so cocky. He's doing this. Like, dude, he just
Yeah,
stated a fact. What do you
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yes, they have won 12 in a row. Of course they're gonna be angry. What did you just want him to say? Like, nah, dude. And I expect him to just not be angry at all because we have whooped their ass for the last year and a half.
yeah,
Like, oh my God. It's so annoying. It is so annoying. It's ridiculous. I
yeah. He
also
gets
I
too
also
much
want to
hate.
bring this up about Draymond Green. He like okay, I think once his career ends, he's gonna be phenomenal on TV, specifically because he's great at like lying,
Yeah.
essentially. Um, because he was saying on TNT after game five, he's like, the Timberwolves don't believe that they can win this series anymore. Not true. Why would they believe that? That's idiotic. You, as someone who has been down in a series, should know that. That is just not true. And then he also, um, he said he was like the Timberwolves after Game Seven. He's like they went on their run once Gobert went out of the game.
Oh yeah,
Once
which
again, not
not true.
true. Not they scored. They were plus 20 in the third quarter in like the 6 minutes that he was in, and then they were like plus 5 in the 6 minutes that he was out. And then they took the lead when he was on the court.
Yeah.
It's like what is he doing? I don't get it. Like and the narrative that was surrounding Gobert after game five, where it's like, oh, this dude's a fake defensive player of the year, like he sucks, he stinks. It's like, guys, we gotta be better at this. Like
Yeah.
there has to be better ways of analyzing basketball
No,
now.
we were talking about this like a little bit in the last podcast too, where it's like Gobert's always been a positive player in the play. Like this whole like, oh, his defense falls off in the playoffs thing. It's just not true. Like the Jazz, I think we were talking about the Jazz, like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
had no perimeter defenders at all. The only reason they're always like a top 10 defense only because of Mitchell or Gobert. Um, so yeah, and then he was again like amazing in this series.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about like Porter having a bad series. A lot of that was because of Rudy Gobert, which is crazy to think because it's
Yeah.
not they don't play anywhere like near each other. But Porter tried to take him one on one, in
That
one of
was
the first
horrible.
games
That
and
was
got
so bad.
absolutely shut down. I wonder, and then he never did the pump fake drive into the lane because Gobert is there. Like I
Yeah.
think he was really Gobert was a huge factor. Um, whether it was contesting his shots or just scaring off really everybody. Like Murray couldn't really get to the cup either. So, um, yeah,
It's this is like the way media has talked about him, and I like people have always Anthony Edwards has been a guy who media has gravitated towards because he's a confident guy and they're winning, so obviously they're gonna gravitate towards him. He's a funny dude, like he is a media darling in that sense. But the way that they talk about the rest of the team is like, dude, what are you do? Like, do some research. Like,
Yeah,
think
yeah.
a little bit about what is coming out of your mouth. And yeah, I mean, I it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean
Honestly,
that.
like going forward, I'm rooting for whoever, but if Minnesota wins, that would be like I want to see how they would cover them.
Oh yeah, I
I
want
really
them
do.
to win too, just because it would show that the Nuggets barely lost to the best team in the NBA. So I would
Yeah.
love to see the Wolves win. Um, yeah, what was I gonna say? Um, yeah, I forgot what were we just talking about?
Media, Wolves,
Yeah. Um, no,
Nuggets,
I had a
Porter.
good point, and then it just left my mind. Um, but oh yeah, just that I guess like the outlook for next season. Oh, and I wanted to say that the Timberwolves are just, as you said, like great team. I mean, they have the two. Jaden McDaniels just made second team all defense, and then obviously Nikhil Alexander Walker amazing, and Edwards is amazing
Mhm.
when they turn it on. They have the sixth man of the year, two All Stars. Like just a reminder, in Jokic's 9 years, he's never had one All Star, never had one All Defensive Player, never had one even close to a six man of the year outside of Will Barton 1 year. Um, and then like never had anyone close, never had a most improved uh coach of the year. Like I don't know.
Uh,
I mean, if Jokic
Malone has
had
I
like,
don't understand how Malone has not been like close. Denver's
oh
always been
yeah,
a top team. He's always been a good I think this series was I don't think this was a great series from him. I thought schematically he could have done a lot better. I thought the rotations in game 7 were really bad. But I mean, I think he's a great I don't know understand how other guys are getting more
yeah,
nominations than him, but yeah, like that Jokic gets treated like an all-time great in terms of the standards, but he is an all-time great, so he should be. But when you're talking about his team accolades, I don't know if you can like you can't stack him up against other people because you look at other guys and this talent that they've been surrounded. Every single other person has been with a top 50 player in the NBA, at least. Like when you talk about all-time greats, like look at Steph, you look at KD, you look at
yeah,
LeBron, you look at Kobe, you look at MJ, you look at Larry Bird, like you look at the guys we even would be with like in the tier that he's in, like in the top 15. Like I feel like I don't even know, like it's a bunch of old guys, but even then, I feel like those guys played with all-time greats. Like
yeah,
Jokic is doing this with essentially, when relative to the rest of the guys, no help. Even though it's not like saying no all stars, even though Jamal Murray is an all-star talent, like it is, but he's not in the regular season. He's not an
yeah.
all-star
No,
guy. He
like
just
exactly. Like I want to ask you about Murray because I feel like a lot of people are talking about MPJ and Gordon, um, because maybe they feel more feasible, like more easy to blame and more feasible to like replace. But like if the Nuggets had like Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell instead of Murray, are they a better team? Like I don't know. Like
no, no it's
Murray's
so weird.
so
It's
because
weird. Murray's an interesting case because I don't know how any of those guys would mesh with Jokic. That's the thing.
that's what I'm yeah,
Like,
that's what's tough about Murray is like the chemistry that he has with Jokic, I feel like is so irreplaceable because it's
yeah,
been built and
and also
created for 8 years.
every single season except this one that he's been a part of, he has been an elite playoff player. It's just hey, sometimes it happens. Like he literally is the biggest playoff riser when it comes to points per game in NBA
Yeah.
history. Number two is Jokic. So like you have those two guys on your team in the playoffs, you're gonna like it's a good thing. I think yeah, I do think guys like Booker and Mitchell are better statistically, and I think had they played an entire like I think if you flop Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell in this series in place of Jamal Murray, I don't know how much different it would be. Um, but I think if they play a whole year and they get to know Jokic and they play with Jokic, it's
Yeah.
possible, but I think like it is so hard to answer that question because yeah, from a statistical perspective, I mean you're looking at a regular season like dominance perspective, yeah, they're probably better, but in the playoffs and specifically the two-man game with Jokic, I do think they're the best duo in the league because they're able to do they you can run actions between the two of them in any way. And you can't do that with any other duo in the NBA. Literally no other team in the NBA has that luxury.
Yeah, I mean his pocket passes and knowing where when to shoot a layup or a step back or a pass to Jokic, I think is amazing. But I also wonder if like so much of that success is just because Jokic is like this all-time great. Like,
Yeah.
and as you
It
said,
is
like maybe
a good question.
if these guys like, oh man, I'm just like, dude, I'm just saying, bro. If they had like if it's Edwards, if they had Edwards
Yeah.
on the team instead of Murray, like I'm just saying, bro. Like I think they
Yeah.
it would flip. And obviously what Edwards gives you on defense is nowhere close to what Jamal
I do
gives you.
think like Murray definitely has improvements to make, specifically with his conditioning. I do think that is an issue. Um, like this season, the injuries were bad. Like he had a ton of really minor nagging injuries that kept him out a long time. The calf strain coming into the playoffs, like it is it is hard. And I will say the calf strain, I tweeted this out a few days ago, but Murray playing through that is insane because every other player who's had a calf strain in the playoffs has missed games, right? Giannis had a calf strain towards the end of the regular season. He missed the regular season, and then he also missed the entire playoffs. Donovan Mitchell missed games 4 and 5 against Boston for it, two must-win games for Cleveland. Uh, Kristaps Porzingis is out essentially the entire playoffs. He's going to be out for the first two games of the conference finals. So Jamal Murray playing through this is not normal. Um, so the fact that he had a poor performance, the fact that he was not himself this series at all, makes sense. But throughout the regular season, he has to be better just in terms of staying in shape. You could definitely tell he was fatigued at certain points of the season in the fourth quarter. His defense was fine, but it can definitely be better. That's the kind of the one thing I'm looking for him. I think he already committed to playing for Canada in the Olympics, which I'm looking forward to seeing. But at the same time, maybe that's good for him because maybe he'll come into the season in shape, and he won't have to climb an uphill battle when it comes to that. But it could backfire. It could just be too much workload for him because I do think he might have to start getting a reputation as an injury-prone player because he hasn't had a full season since his rookie year, and that's just
Yeah.
I think he's too far into his career for that still to be an issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, it just could be like a overreaction a little bit on my part of just like 1 year out of, this
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
12-year run. And we're just looking at 1 year right now. And he could just come back and have a phenomenal playoffs next season and just like shut me up. Because like I mean he was just like I say this stuff of like oh Mitchell Edwards but Edwards is not going to average 33 on like 55% shooting against the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals.
no,
Like probably
no,
not and or be phenomenal against the Heat as well.
yeah, he's not gonna have
Like,
four
that
straight
was
double
just
doubles to open up
yeah,
a
yeah,
finals
yeah.
career. Like he's not
So
the
I mean,
playmaker Murray is, and I think Ant is better, but also he was a number one overall pick and like the best player in the country in high school. Like it is a different situation for him. Like I think Mitchell and Booker are a better comparison. Like Edwards is just a ridiculous talent. Like I think in terms of his athleticism and his mentality and everything like that coinciding is that's like not that's a very rare combination. But I think Edward or Booker and Mitchell are better comparisons for that, where it's like you know guys who have statistically been better than Jamal in the regular season the past couple of years, but I don't know if they're better in the playoffs. Like it's over the course of their careers. I don't know if they've been. It's weird. It's such a weird like argument to have because I do think there is like something to be looked at there, but it's so hard to answer the question because of how good he is with Jokic.
right. Um, Going back to this kind of just popped into my mind of like philosophy of the team building stuff and just how we didn't get anything out of Gordon and KCP the entire playoffs. Like, I wonder if the Nuggets could look to just become like full like offensive mode with Jokic and just like outscore teams because KCP working so hard on defense is gonna, you know, make his offense bad. And the same thing with Aaron Gordon. Um, and maybe Porter to an extent too, because I thought his defense was great as well. Um, and so like I wonder like if you do have to make a tweak in this like starting lineup, like Gordon is like an interesting like case to me because I feel he is so valuable defensively and energy wise and rebounding wise, and it's awesome to have that dunker spot there for Jokic. But at the same time, it felt like against Minnesota and sometimes against other teams too, like Philly or something like that. Like Gordon being so close to the hoop always, I feel like kind of hurts Jokic some ways with scoring because there's always a second guy that comes over and gets in his way. Um, and they're not playing Gordon at all when he's standing at the 3 point line. So even if Gordon moved back to the 3 point line, like the defense is still collapsed. Um, and I feel like it kind of hurts Jokic a little bit scoring wise. And I feel like the Nuggets in this series were at their best when Gordon was making threes.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always going to happen, obviously. And it showed that when he stopped making them, when he stopped taking them, um, that the Nuggets offense was severely worse. And so I wonder, like, just having like a shooter, I wonder if that would be better. Like, what if they had like a Porzingis, like, instead of Gordon, and you have that spacing? I feel like that could have, would work better against a team like the Timberwolves. Um, I like that's just a theory because I love Aaron Gordon and what he brings to the team, but I'm just wondering
Yeah.
like if it would just open more for Jokic scoring wise and for the offense. If you just go full in offense, like I think you could
Yeah.
just outscore the Timberwolves.
I think you could. I think like part of the reason why Minnesota even made that Gobert trade was because they knew that they could essentially ignore Aaron Gordon on offense.
Yeah,
And they had the conversations after I think it was game 4, game 5, where it's like, yeah, we have to respect him. He's an NBA player. They knew that that was their point. Like, if Aaron Gordon beats you, fine. You're just not gonna let Jokic or Murray beat you.
yeah,
Um, and that's exactly what they did in game 7. They forced someone else to beat them, and it worked. So I do think that there is something like that. Like, I think a lot of people go back to the Jeremy Grant decision. I think Grant still would have been perfect on this team had he just had the right mindset. I don't think he does, which is why he's not there. But had he stayed, I think he would have had the same role that Aaron Gordon does now. I don't think he's as good defensively, but offensively, for sure, he would have had a much bigger impact.
yeah.
He's a better shooter, he's a
I
better
even like think
attacker.
of I think the offense was better with Paul Millsap like back in the
Yeah,
day. And
yeah,
Millsap could kind of give you that Aaron Gordon role defensively a little bit, and then he gave you more spacing offensively. And the offense was kind of really clicking, during that time period when it was just all offense and like they couldn't defend for anything. But
yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting. I think if they were, I don't think they're going to get rid of Gordon. I don't think they're going to get rid
no,
of
no, no.
anybody
Yeah,
on the starting lineup. But if they were to make a tweak and say that they would change that, you would still have to think about the defensive side because then your one wing defender is then Michael Porter,
yeah,
and that's not the situation that you want to be in. I think he's improved as a defender, but as your main guy, no way. So you would
yeah.
have to
Again,
still.
like
I think you just have to get like a 3 and D specific person. Like
yeah,
if like Mikhail Bridges was available, and he was there, and then you just move Porter to the 4. I think that would be like an ideal thing, or like say like Jonathan Isaac, where defensively you're still going to get a lot of the same stuff, but he is a better shooter. He's a better offensive player overall. I would say that would kind of be ideal, but it's so hard to find people like that. Those guys are priced at such a premium. They're so valuable in the NBA. Uh, I think Aaron Gordon, what he does give you defensively, like you just have to live with the trade off of just potentially just not having offense. And I think Aaron Gordon's option number 5 on offense. He should not be the one to blame for the offense not being good. Like it is on Porter and KCP for not making their open looks.
no,
So
that's what I
at
was.
least to me, that's the like we can say that Gordon ruins the offense as much as it wants. But Denver had open looks.
No, I know.
Specifically, Porter and KCP had open looks. They just didn't make them.
Yeah, that's what I was
Um,
gonna say too. Is like we can talk about all those, but straight up is if Porter just makes his shots, they win the series. And like again, like theoretically, that's his like role on the team. And you should be getting like three threes out of him per game, at least. Um, and so yeah, like we say all that, but again, I think the lineup is just like when everything is working, it's perfect. Um,
yeah,
but yeah. When
it's
something is
just
off though, like if Porter is missing shots, like you're gonna lose the series, and that's what happened. And so it's like it relies on Murray and Jokic a lot, but also like it does rely on like the other guys a lot too. And it's like if one guy, maybe you can like have KCP, whatever, have like a 5 point game or something, but like if Gordon or Porter are both off, there's just not like enough. Um, yeah,
yeah. I think hopefully Strother can develop into the guy to where you know you can put him in those lineups and he can give you a spark. It's like we talk about it all the time. Where it's like we just wish Denver could have just a guy who just goes and scores and just goes and gets a bucket. I do think Strother can be that. I think that is his ideal archetype where he is. I think he has a good enough handle to do that already, but I think he can improve it. Um, and just get his confidence back. Like the player that we saw in the preseason, where he's breaking down people off the dribble, he's shooting mid ranges, coming off of flares, he's coming off pin downs, he's attacking the rim, shooting the floater. I think that is a very, very valuable skill that Denver is going to need to have next season. Um, but and I think in a situation like this, you have to have someone you can trust. I honestly thought Denver should have closed with Christian Brown uh, instead of Porter because I thought Brown was playing a lot better defensively. I thought he was going to give you the energy that you needed. You could have stuck him on Edwards,
yeah,
but I don't know. It's a tough thing, like
yeah. I mean, it's tough.
because we've never seen it before. We haven't seen them look that bad, so like you don't really know. It's like okay, you haven't had time to think about what you could potentially do, or what the actual issue really is, like because we just haven't seen it before.
Yeah. And again, like it's hard to just like hope that a young player becomes good because it is hard to find like good NBA players. Like starting caliber good NBA players is like that
Yeah,
doesn't just happen. And so like having to just hope that these young players like becomes that again is pretty risky, but um, let's hope that Kroenke kind of goes deep into his pockets this offseason.
yeah,
And
and I think he will. I think like KCP, yeah, he has. I think he has the player option. He's probably going to decline it, but Denver has his bird rights, and they also like they're already a second apron team anyway. So getting rid of him, it's not like it's opening up 15 mil that you can sign someone else. It just takes 15 million off the books. So you're not losing anything by just signing him anyway. So I think they're going to give him what he wants. I think he is very impactful. Obviously, the Ant matchup is not a good one, but against 90% of the teams in the NBA, he's phenomenal.
yeah.
Uh, and Denver still had a chance to win. They should have won even despite those disadvantages that they had. So I think
Also,
he's
this was kind
like,
of the first time that he was just not like a good shooter. Like he's been a 40% plus 3 point shooter for the Nuggets this entire time. And then it just went and saw, yeah. I wonder if it all just is like fatigue.
I think it is. I honestly do think it is. Like Denver had to go so hard from pretty much mid-February to now. They had to go 100% the entire time, and it's hard to do that. Like it's hard to do that. I will say, I think the team that we saw in this Minnesota series, at least from a mentality standpoint, is what the Nuggets were. They had a lot of games this season where they had big leads and they just let go of the rope the entire time. I don't think that the mentality and the hunger was the same that it was last year. I was very certain of that um, after that Spurs game. I have a 25 point lead, pretty much guaranteeing you on the number one seed again, and then you lose it, and then you're stuck playing Minnesota in the second round rather than having a couple of easier series uh, in the first two. and almost a pretty much guaranteed conference finals berth. But that happened. You had the game against Orlando, which I remember in like December or January, where they were up 20, and Orlando wasn't really playing anybody, and they lost. Yeah, you had the game against the Thunder, where I don't remember when it was, but it was in like November or December, where they were up late in the fourth quarter and they completely collapsed and
Yeah.
allowed them to win at
At
home.
home. Yeah.
Yeah. You had the Clippers game where you were up 25 or something, and Jokic just completely didn't like it was like the worst game of his career. No one else really stepped up.
I
All the
remember
games against the Rockets,
I was gonna
like
say I remember a Rockets game really pissing me off. Uh
yeah, like there were a lot of times
yeah.
this season where Denver just didn't have the hunger and they didn't have the fight that they did last year, and that's what it came down to.
But they finished with a better record, like so that's just like the weird part to me.
That's so weird. It doesn't make any sense. Like I think
But
like because I
it
do think
felt better last year though for some
I
reason.
do because I think the bench was better this season. Like the bench wasn't good, but it was better this season. And they did like they were sleepwalking until the All Star break essentially, and that shows how good that they were, and that's what makes it so angry. The fact that they had this mentality because I do think they're a better team than they were last year. Like they just their mentality just wasn't right coming into the playoffs. I think they did think they could beat everybody regardless of what happened. I don't think they ever had
Yeah.
a doubt in their mind that they would lose. And while it's a good thing to have, I think they severely underestimated everybody that they played, specifically
Now
Minnesota,
maybe
based on the
maybe
first
this
two
is
games.
a good thing now. Like
Yeah, I think it is. I think
as
it is.
Jamal keeps bringing up in his post game conferences, he's like, it's weird being the hunted because they were always like the hunter, um, and so they've never really felt like come like that other teams are coming after him after a big championship win. So I wonder if this kind of maybe humbles them a little bit and like brings them back to that hunger of whatever being the hunted, I guess. But I don't even
Yeah,
know if that's like a real thing. But
I think it is. Like it's because it's not just the players, like it's the franchise as a whole. It's the organization as a whole that has really never experienced
yeah,
being at the top of the mountain before. And I don't I don't think they knew how to handle it, which is fair. So, but yeah, I'm glad. I think Denver plays better when their backs are against the wall. We clearly saw it games 3, 4, and 5. Their backs were against the wall. They got the tiniest bit of separation, the tiniest bit of lead, and they went back to who they were in the regular season, which was a team that just didn't have the focus to play a full 48, which is unfortunate, but the reality of what it was. But yeah, I mean, I tweeted that out in game 6 too. I was like, this is not like I don't think this team has the mentality of a championship team. Like
yeah.
it just
Like last year they
championship
wouldn't.
teams don't let up leads like that. They step on
Last
your
year they
throat. That's
wouldn't
what they
have
did
get
last year,
gotten
and it just didn't
blown
happen.
out. Yeah, they didn't even
Just
lose a single game last year by double digits, right?
in the playoffs, no, every game was
Yeah.
close. No, and
And
they
in
got
this series, they have three
killed.
games where they got outscored by like 100 points.
They got killed. But yeah, just the way I saw it. They said something during the broadcast in Game 7 where it was in Game 6, Minnesota had 3 runs totaling 57-0 in one game. You spotted them 60 points. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. Championship teams don't do that. So I don't really think Denver just had the mentality of it, um, which is okay. I think it's needed going into next season. You get some rest for Jokic as well. I heard this is like the most. I think this is what some people do when they say they have like sources tell them about something. This guy on Twitter who said his source is Jokic's daughter's friend's mother
yeah.
said he's getting an MRI on his wrist.
Oh my God.
so so hopefully that means he's something is going to happen because I do think that
Yeah,
wrist has been bothering him for literally 3 years,
yeah,
and he hasn't done anything with it. So hopefully he gets like surgery. He does something. He said he's not committed to Serbia for the Olympics yet, so we'll see. Hopefully he just takes the surgery and rests. But if he wants to play for Serbia as well, that would be fine. I mean, I'm not going to argue against that. Uh, but yeah, it's a. I hope he gets something done with the wrist because that is a legit issue for him right now.
yeah. All right. Well, that probably does it. We'll probably talk about like Well, when is I mean, the draft is coming up soon, and then, but when's like the decision on like KCP's whole thing? I don't know.
Ooh, I think the deadline's like June 30th or something like that. I don't remember. We'll have to look that up. We'll have to talk about it. We'll probably do an episode with like off-season targets
Yeah, exactly.
and
That's
draft targets and stuff like that. It was weird. Last year, like the season ended and then the draft was like the next week. It was
no,
so
I know.
odd. It was so quick, the
Yeah,
turnaround. So now we actually have some time to like look and research into who we
facts.
want. I've already been doing some stuff on that a little bit. Daron Holmes, please.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
uh we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We will come to you guys at some point. Whenever that happens, we'll get some sort of schedule going. But yeah, I think that's it. Long episode today.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot to get out, but thank you guys for tuning in. See y'all next time. Peace.